very sorry you've got to listen to me again. This is, I'm afraid, an accident of the timetable has meant you've heard rather too much of Pritchard for one day. So I'll try to keep this as brief as I can. Let's start with a quiz. Whose words are these? Even as the appetite for information and data flowing through the internet is voracious, we've seen newsrooms closed. The bottom line has shrunk. The news cycle has as well. Anybody know who that was? No? Okay, I'll carry on. And too often, there is an enormous pressure on journalists to fill the void and feed the beast with instant commentary and Twitter rumours and celebrity gossip and softer stories. And then we fail to understand our world or understand one another as well as we should. Still, no clues to who that might be? It's President Barack Obama. Close. Not a journalist, not an editor, but a politician, speaking last month in praise of real journalism. He went on, part of the independence of the Fourth Estate is that it is not government-controlled, and media companies thereby have an obligation to pursue profits on behalf of their shareholders, their owners, and also has an obligation to invest a good chunk of that profit back into news and to maintain certain standards, and to not dumb down the news, and to have higher aspirations for what effective news can do. Because a well-informed electorate depends on you, and our democracy depends on a well-informed electorate. Very fine words, I think you'll agree. No one in this room could really disagree with them. But the newspaper trade, and I confine myself to newspapers and leave broadcasting to my good friends here, the newspaper trade is facing a tough time in the West with falling circulations and falling advertising revenues. That's not the case in Asia, where newspapers continue to grow and circulations increase. Globally, the newspaper circulation revenues are higher than advertising revenues for the first time this century. Audiences, the people that we deal with directly, have become the publisher's biggest source of revenue. According to the World Press Trends Report for 2015, the industry generated an estimated $179 billion US in circulation and advertising revenue in 2014. $92 billion came from print and digital circulation, while $87 billion came from advertising. So for the first time this century, we've taken more money from subscribers and readers than we have from the advertiser. But while these global figures look healthy enough, those of us in Europe and the United States see a different picture of falling print circulations and declining advertising revenue, both in print and online. Those that offer free access to online audiences, websites such as my own, The Guardian's, which has 140 million viewers a month, have seen a massive growth in readership figures, but no corresponding growth in advertising revenue. The summer of 2015 will be remembered as the moment of a perfect storm hitting Britain's newspapers. The print advertising market plunged by as much as 30% in some weeks. This issue has been exacerbated by an equally alarming slowdown in the rate of growth in the digital advertising revenue market that publishers have been relying upon to replace the decline in print advertising. An example is the world's biggest newspaper website, Mail Online. With well over 200 million monthly users, it should be an attractive buy for advertisers. Yet it saw growth slow to single digits last summer. David Pemsel, the chief executive of my group, the Guardian Group, was one of a number of senior industry executives who pointed the finger at Google and Facebook. Pemsel, echoing the Daily Mirror publisher, Trinity Mirror, noted that the internet giants were hoovering up digital advertising spend at a far faster rate than previously seen. There are numbers out there, he said, to say that year-on-year digital increase is around 30%. But 29% of that went to internet platforms like Google and Facebook, and 1% of that was shared among everybody else. And there have been real casualties in this. The Independent and Independent on Sunday, established in Britain 30 years ago as fresh voices in what was then a buoyant market, closed their print editions last month, muting a liberal outlet in what is a predominantly conservative press. And the Guardian newspaper group, which includes my newspaper, The Observer, announced losses of more than £50 million last year, and is currently planning on losing 250 staff, 100 in editorial. A combination of the estimated 200 million people globally who use ad blockers, 12 million in the UK, and scepticism among advertisers about the number of video ads on our websites that are actually being viewed has led to this digital slowdown. And it's not just the national press that has felt this chill wind. For years now, our regional press has seen its advertising disappear online. Local papers have closed. Others struggle with tiny staffs, unable to offer the breadth of coverage that local democracy deserves. Time and again, local government goes unreported. Accountability is disappearing fast. There's still money to be made from print advertising, but often weak, paid-for local newspapers have been replaced by free advertising sheets that masquerade as a newspaper, with no intention of offering thorough reporting. Both nationally and locally, we see attempts to get closer to advertisers with the growth of sponsored content and native advertising. It's an area where news ombudsmen have to be particularly watchful. If you haven't done so already, you must get involved in setting the parameters for these advertising vehicles. If they are not clearly labelled, they should be. Readers deserve to know. No one wants to discourage advertising teams from finding new sources of revenue, but it is our job to ensure that the newspaper's integrity remains intact. Earlier, I pointed out that for the first time this century, cover price and print and online subscription has overtaken advertising as the major source of revenue for the world's newspapers. That means that readers are more important to the survival of the media than they have ever been. For a news organisation to maintain and strengthen its position, it has to be credible in the eyes of its audience. And that's where we come in. The presence of an ombudsman is a clear signal that the organisation takes the reader seriously. As staff shrink, the temptation to cut corners, to rely on a single source, to get the story done and move on to the next one is ever present. The ombudsman should be part of the conversation about the future of the newsroom. Some interesting thinking is going on in the UK at the moment. As I mentioned earlier in our shop talk, The Times has announced it will no longer be publishing breaking news on its website. When the BBC and The Guardian can offer breaking news for free, it makes little sense for them to try to do the same from behind a paywall. Sticking to the free model, The Guardian is extending the idea of membership for its readers, asking them to contribute financially to the journalism in return for a range of incentives. Again, where media are considering such schemes, ombudsmen have to play a part. I'm not suggesting that the ombudsman becomes part of a commercial operation of this, by talking to the members about the job that we do, but we can do some, as we do at the moment. We talk to readers. and can help strengthen the bond and helps display the efforts that the organisation makes to keep the flow of news as pure as possible. The Panama Papers are the latest example of a collaborative journalism across continents that show the media is far from defeated by current financial difficulties. But we should not lose sight of the fact that straightforward, unflashy, shoe leather reporting is threatened by the lack of cash in many newsrooms. We can play our part in keeping our organisations focused on the now crucially important audience, urging editors to resist the temptation to cover everything, to do less with fewer people, but to do it well. Thank you.